The ledger hit the floor with a thud. $180,000 in debts I never made. My name, my credit, my life, all stolen. The enforcer's fist still throbbed where I'd slammed the door on it. But the numbers didn't lie. Someone had built a cage around me, and the locks were all in my name. The SUV, the loans, the collectors. They weren't mistakes. They were traps. And the worst part? The paper trail led straight back to my childhood home. Too late to run, too late to hide. The air in David Miller's office tasted of ozone and expensive upholstery. Maya Sterling smoothed her skirt, the wool scratching against her thighs as she waited for a signature. David didn't reach for his pen. Instead, he swiveled his monitor toward her, the blue light reflecting off his wire-rimmed spectacles and casting a ghostly pallor over his features. $180,000, David said. His thumb tapped a rhythmic beat against the mahogany desk, a sound like a distant hammer hitting a coffin nail. It's a graveyard of defaults, Maya. 2 high-interest lines of credit, a defaulted lease on a luxury SUV in Miami, and 3 maxed-out cards, all delinquent. The numbers blurred into a jagged horizon on the screen. Maya's throat tightened, the phantom weight of a stone settling in her chest. Miami? David, I haven't left the city in 3 years. My tax returns show. The system doesn't care about your travel logs, David interrupted. He slid a thick folder across the desk. The paper felt cold, clinical. It shows your social security number, your mother's maiden name, and a consistent trail of signatures that look remarkably like yours. Someone built a life on your ghost, and they burned it down. Maya reached for the folder, her fingertips trembling against the manila tab. The office hummed with the drone of the air conditioner, a persistent, mechanical whine that seemed to vibrate in her teeth. A collection notice from a bank she'd never visited sat at the top of the pile. Her name sat printed in bold, black ink, anchored to a debt that could swallow her whole. The condo, the sunlight through the floor-to-ceiling windows she'd dreamed of, evaporated. David sighed, the sound of air escaping a punctured tire, and closed his laptop. I can't approve the mortgage, Maya. As my old man used to say, a credit score is a man's soul. Right now, yours is in the red. Maya walked out of the bank with the folder clutched to her chest like a shield. The Seattle mist was a fine spray against her face, smelling of wet asphalt and salt. Every step she took down the concrete stairs required a quiet, internal count. 1, 2, 3. She needed the rhythm to keep her feet from slipping out from under her world. The law firm of Vance and Associates was housed in a building of glass and steel that seemed to disappear into the low-hanging clouds. Inside, the lobby smelled of lemon polish and old money. Robert Vance sat behind a desk so large it felt like a barricade. He was wearing a crisp white shirt, shirt 12, according to the tiny number stitched inside the collar, which he checked twice as Maya laid out the documents. "It's a masterpiece of ruin," Robert said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. He flipped through the pages with surgical precision. The signatures are perfect. The addresses used for the billing are old residences of yours or your family's. Legally speaking, Maya, the paper trail doesn't just point to you, it is you. But I didn't sign these, Maya whispered, her voice cracking. I was in Seattle. I was designing the Pier 55 expansion. I have logs. Robert looked at her over his glasses. The law doesn't look at where your body was. It looks at where your identity was. And your identity was busy buying a car in Florida and taking out payday loans in Portland. To a judge, this isn't identity theft. It looks like a high earner who had a nervous breakdown and went on a spending spree. I can't take the case, Maya. The optics are, well, they're catastrophic. Maya felt the floor tilt. 4, 5, 6. She counted the steps to the elevator, the numbers a frantic prayer against the rising tide of panic. She needed to get home. She needed to breathe. The hallway of her apartment building was a narrow throat of dim yellow light and the smell of stale cooking oil. The radiator was hissing, a metallic snake hidden behind the peeling wallpaper. As she fumbled for her keys, a shadow detached itself from the doorway of the maintenance closet. A man stepped into her path, his presence a physical wall. He wore a cheap leather jacket that smelled of old cigarettes and damp earth. His neck was a thick column of muscle, and he was picking at his cuticles, a small drop of red blooming against his thumb. "Maya Sterling," he said. It wasn't a question. "Who are you?" Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, a trapped bird. "Mike, I represent Apex Capital," the man said. He stepped closer, crowding her into the doorframe. The heat from the radiator felt oily against her skin. "You owe $50,000 on a signature loan. You missed the last 3 payments. My bosses, they don't like silence. They like the sound of money hitting the table." "I don't know what you're talking about," Maya said, her voice rising. "I never took a loan from Apex." Mike leaned in, his face inches from hers. "The contract says different. Now, we can do this the easy way, where you sign this new payment plan. Or we can do it the way where I come back every night and remind you why you should have." He reached out, his hand heavy on her shoulder, pinning her. Maya felt the familiar spark of terror, the same feeling she'd had when she was 10 and her mother told her the money was gone. But this time, she wasn't a child. She didn't think. She reached into her bag, her fingers closing around the small canister of pepper spray she kept for late nights at the office. She brought it up and pressed the trigger. A cloud of orange mist hissed into the air, smelling of burning peppers and chemicals. Mike roared, his hands flying to his eyes. He stumbled back, crashing into a stack of recycling bins. In the chaos, a small, leather-bound book tumbled from his jacket pocket. Maya lunged for it, her fingers brushing the cold, cracked leather. She snatched it up and bolted down the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. She didn't stop until she reached her car, the engine turning over with a desperate whine. She sat in the driver's seat, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She opened the ledger. It wasn't a bank book. It was a handwritten record of misery. Names, dates, and amounts, all tied to a company called Apex Capital Holdings. And there, on the 3rd page, was her name. Beside it, in a handwriting she recognized with a sickening jolt, was her mother's address in Portland. The drive south was a blur of gray rain and rhythmic windshield wipers. Maya's mind was a construction site of half-formed plans. She arrived in Portland as the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting long, bruised shadows across the neighborhood. Her childhood home looked different. The white paint was peeling in long strips, like dead skin. But what froze Maya's blood was the sign shoved into the damp earth of the front lawn. For sale. S&S Realty. Her mother was running. Maya didn't knock. She used her old key, the metal cold and familiar in her hand. The house smelled of cloying jasmine perfume and something sour, like rotting wood. Elena Sterling was in the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes. She looked up, her skin smooth and taut from recent fillers, a glass of wine in her hand. "Maya, Angel?" Elena said, her voice a melodic trill. "You should have called. I would have made a salad. The condo is gone, Mom," Maya said, her voice flat. She held up the folder from the bank. The SUV, the credit cards, the loan from Mike. Why? Elena sighed, a soft, theatrical sound. She walked over to a floor lamp and whispered, "Oh, pardon me," as she bumped into it. She turned back to Maya, her eyes wide and innocent. "You've always been so sensitive, sweetheart. It's a worry. I didn't steal anything. I simply used the resources available to us. After everything I sacrificed to raise you, the ballet lessons, the private tutors, don't you think a mother deserves a little security? It's just a parenting fee, Maya. A deferred payment for a life well lived." Subverted. Maya stood in the center of the living room, her chest heaving. She had spent years preparing for this moment, rehearsing the logic, the evidence, the moral weight of her argument. She believed that if she could just show Elena the sheer scale of the damage, the $180,000 debt, the ruined career, the looming shadow of Mike, her mother would finally have to break. She would see the daughter she had nearly destroyed and offer a shred of genuine remorse. "Mom, listen to me," Maya said, her voice trembling but controlled. She laid out the documents on a packing box. "This isn't just money. This is a felony. If I go to the police, you go to prison. But if you sign an affidavit now, if you admit what you did, I can fix the credit. We can work out a way for you to pay it back slowly. I'll help you. I won't let you drown. But you have to stop this. You have to be my mother for once." Maya felt a surge of hope. It was a smart move. By offering a way out, she was incentivizing the truth. She was being the adult, the architect of a solution. Elena's face softened. Her eyes grew glassy with tears. She reached out and touched Maya's forearm, her fingers warm. "Oh, Maya, you're right. I've been so selfish. The debt, it just got away from me. I wanted to feel like I belonged in your world. I'll sign whatever you want. I want to make it right." Relief washed over Maya, so potent it made her knees weak. She felt the tension leave her shoulders for the first time in weeks. The nightmare was ending. She reached into her bag for a pen, her heart light. But then, she noticed a small detail. Elena wasn't looking at the papers. She was looking past Maya, toward the hallway. And she was smiling. Not a mother's smile, but the sharp, predatory grin of a gambler who had just seen the winning card. "You're right, Maya," Elena whispered, her voice suddenly cold as ice. "I did use your name, and I used it to write a book. Well, technically, I sold the rights to our family story to a tabloid producer last week. The Ungrateful Daughter, A Mother's Survival. I told them how you've been funneling money away from me for years, leaving me destitute while you lived in luxury. That $180,000? I told them that was your allowance to me that you suddenly revoked out of spite." Maya froze. "What?" "The debt is in your name, Maya. But the story is mine. And in my story, you're the villain who tried to bribe her poor, aging mother into silence with a fake affidavit. I've already recorded our reconciliation on my phone. You sound so guilty, offering to pay it back if I just sign your little paper. It's perfect. It's the ultimate parenting fee." The world tilted. Maya realized with a sickening jolt that by trying to be smart and merciful, she had handed Elena the rope to hang her with. Her offer of help was now evidence of a bribe. Her logic was a weapon turned against her. The front door creaked open. A man in a tan windbreaker stepped inside, a process server. He didn't look at Elena. He looked straight at Maya. "Maya Sterling, you've been served." He handed her a thick stack of legal papers. It was a lawsuit from Apex Capital, a civil summons for the $50,000 loan. The deadline for a response was 48 hours. The clock hadn't just started. It was already screaming. "Get out of my house, Maya," Elena said, turning back to her packing. "I have a flight to catch. And pardon me," she added, whispering to a chair as she brushed past it. Maya stumbled onto the porch, the heavy air of Portland pressing against her lungs. She heard footsteps, heavy, rhythmic thuds. Her brother, Kevin, was walking up the driveway. He was a large man, his oversized hoodie straining against his shoulders. He was lining up a row of sugar packets on the porch railing, his hands shaking. "You need to leave, Maya," Kevin said, his voice a low growl. "Mom's stressed. You're making her head spin." "Kevin, she's stealing from me. She's stealing from you too. Look at this." Maya held up the ledger she'd taken from Mike. Kevin didn't look. He stepped into her space, looming over her. The crinkle of sugar packets in his pocket was the only sound in the sudden silence. "I don't care about the money. I care about the peace. You pay the bills, and the screaming stops. That's the deal. Now, give me the bag." He lunged for her purse. Maya spun away, her foot catching on a loose floorboard. They grappled on the edge of the porch, the smell of burnt garlic and copper rising from the nearby kitchen window. Kevin shoved her, a hard, panicked burst of strength. Maya felt the ground vanish. She tumbled down the 3 wooden steps, her shoulder hitting the gravel with a sickening crunch. 1, 2, 3. She counted the impact. Kevin stood over her, breathing hard. But as he had lunged, a small travel folder had slipped from his pocket, landing near Maya's hand. He didn't notice. He pointed a finger at her. "Don't come back, Maya, or next time I won't just shove you." He slammed the front door. Maya lay in the gravel, her shoulders screaming in pain. She reached out and grabbed the travel folder. Inside was a brochure for a Mediterranean cruise, a luxury suite for 2. The names on the booking were Elena Sterling and Kevin Sterling. Her brother wasn't just a victim. He was the beneficiary. He was the enforcer for a crime he was helping to commit. The next morning, the sky was the color of a bruised plum. Maya sat in a diner, her arm in a makeshift sling, her laptop open. Her phone buzzed, a call from the senior partner at her firm. "Maya?" The voice was cold, professional. "We've received a notice from the state licensing board. There's a multi-million-dollar construction bond for a project in Tacoma with your seal on it. The bond is in default. The insurance company says you co-signed it." "I didn't," Maya whispered. "I never—" "The signature is a digital match, Maya. Until this is cleared up, your license is suspended. We're putting you on unpaid leave, effective immediately." The floor was gone. The fortress she had built out of blueprints and hard work had been demolished by a ghost. She was 29 years old, $230,000 in debt, and her career was a pile of rubble. She looked down at the ledger she had stolen from Mike. She began to tear at the leather binding, her fingers searching for something, anything. In a hidden slit in the spine, she felt something hard. A tiny, silver USB drive. She plugged it into her laptop. The screen filled with rows of data, IP addresses, timestamps, and login credentials. It was the back-end log for Apex Capital's lending portal. Every loan, every signature, every click was recorded. She saw her name. She saw the date of the Tacoma bond. And then she saw the IP address used to sign it. She cross-referenced it with her mother's home network. It was a match. But more importantly, she looked at the timestamp. The bond had been signed at 2:14 p.m. on a Tuesday. Maya opened her own work logs. At 2:14 p.m. that Tuesday, She had been in a high-security server room at her firm, which required a biometric scan to enter. There was no way she could have been on her mother's network. She had the proof. She drove back to the house. It was Thanksgiving Day, but there was no smell of turkey. Just the cloying jasmine and the sound of laughter from inside. She pushed the door open. Elena and Kevin were sitting at the dining table, drinking expensive champagne. "The party's over," Maya said. She held up the USB drive. "I have the logs, I have the IP addresses, and I have the security footage from my office proving I wasn't the one who clicked sign." Elena's face didn't change. She didn't pale. She just set her glass down and whispered, "Pardon me," to the salt shaker. "Maya, dear," Elena said, "you always were too smart for your own good." Kevin stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. He reached for a steak knife on the table. "Give her the drive, Maya, now." "No," Maya said. "I'm calling the police. It's over." Subverted. Maya felt a sense of righteous triumph. This was the moment in the story where the truth set her free. She had the digital smoking gun. She had the physical evidence of their conspiracy. She reached for her phone, her thumb hovering over the digits for 911. "Go ahead," Elena said, her voice eerily calm. "Call them. I already did." Maya paused. "What?" "I called them 20 minutes ago," Elena said, smoothing her skirt. "I told them my daughter, who has a history of mental instability and drug abuse, which I've documented in my book, showed up at my house in a manic state. I told them you were demanding money to fund your habit and that you were becoming violent." "That's a lie," Maya shouted. "Is it?" Elena pointed to her own face. There was a fresh red bruise on her cheek, one she must have given herself. Kevin had a scratch on his arm. "We're a united front, Maya. A grieving mother and a protective brother. And you? You're a disgraced architect with a suspended license and a mountain of debt. Who do you think the police are going to believe? The woman who says sorry to the furniture, or the one screaming about IP addresses and secret ledgers?" A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. The sound vibrated through the floorboards, matching the frantic beat of Maya's heart. "I have the drive," Maya cried, holding it out. "The evidence is right here." Elena smiled. "You mean the drive you stole from a man named Mike? The man who filed a police report for assault and robbery against you last night? The police aren't coming to help you, Maya. They're coming to arrest a violent thief who's been harassing her family." The front door burst open, or burst. 2 officers stepped in, their boots heavy on the hardwood. They saw Maya standing over her mother, her face flushed with rage, holding a stolen USB drive. They saw Elena cowering in her chair, weeping silently. "Drop the device," the officer shouted. "Wait, you don't understand. Drop it now." Maya felt the cold bite of steel as the handcuffs snapped around her wrists. 1, 2. She didn't count the third. The drive was snatched from her hand and bagged as evidence. As she was let out, she saw Elena wink at her, a tiny, cruel movement of an eyelid. The holding cell smelled of bleach and despair. Maya sat on the cold bench, the fluorescent light flickering above her like a strobe. 1, 2, 3. She counted the pulses of light. She was at rock bottom. She had tried to play by the rules, tried to be clever, and every move had been anticipated and countered. But as she sat there, her architectural mind began to work. She thought about the metadata. She thought about the way the light hit the server room at her office. She realized something. The USB drive wasn't just evidence of the theft. It was a map. When Detective Sarah Jenkins entered the room, she looked tired. She was typing into her phone, her apology log, clicking rhythmically. "I'm sorry we have to meet like this," Sarah said. "But your mother's story is very compelling." "My mother is a predator," Maya said, her voice steady. "Look at the timestamps on that drive. Compare them to the biometric logs at my firm. I wasn't just at work. I was in a room that records the exact weight of the person entering. It records the heat signature. It's a bank-grade security system." Sarah paused. "The firm's logs?" "Yes. And look at the cruise brochure. My brother is unemployed. How did he afford a $10,000 vacation? Follow the money, detective. Don't look at the signatures. Look at the wires." Sarah Jenkins looked at Maya for a long time. Then she nodded. "I'll look." 6 months later, the Seattle mist was still there, but it felt different. It felt like a veil being lifted. Maya stood in her new apartment. It was small, a studio with thrift store furniture and a draft that licked at her ankles. But it was hers. The lease was in her name, and for the first time in her life, the name meant something. Elena was in a state penitentiary, serving 5 years for wire fraud and identity theft. Kevin had taken a plea deal, testifying against his mother in exchange for a suspended sentence. He was working in a warehouse in Tacoma, still hoarding his sugar packets, but he was out of Maya's life. Maya opened her laptop and logged into her credit monitoring service. The screen was green. The $180,000 was gone, wiped away by a court order. Her license had been reinstated. She looked at the blank nameplate on her desk. She picked up a pen and began to write. She didn't need a fortress of glass and steel. She didn't need to count the stairs to make sure the ground was there. She was the ground. Maya Sterling sat in the silence of her own life, and for the first time, she didn't hear the counting. She just heard the rain against the window, a steady, natural rhythm that didn't need to be measured. She was free.